His latest stunt actually backfire on him and motivate the U.S. to seek out totally new sources of oil in the Gulf or perhaps Anwar, or maybe put more effort into developing alternative fuels, because you've seen some oil companies do that now.
Yeah, we have. Our Fox panel is back to talk about it. And, Eric, it is kind of two issues here. First of all, the question of Chavez, who's clearly a nut and is a real nut in our machinery here. But could it have a positive benefit in getting us off foreign oil?
If he were to cut off all sales to the U.S., yeah. I don't think he can do that. His economy is based on oil sales to the U.S. He sends about 1 million barrels a day.
So it's all rhetoric on his part.
It has to be rhetoric. That economy is on a thin thread right now. If you were to pull 1 million barrels out of the U.S., by the way, he's right. This is heavy sulfur oil that can't be refined in China. It can't be refined in Japan. It needs to come here. Listen, if he really wanted to stick it to the U.S., he owns Citgo. Petrovez owns Citgo. They own 6% of U.S. refining. If anything were to happen to that 6%, we're on such a thin line with our gasoline and heating oil supply.
Thanks a lot. You just gave him a great idea about it. Mess us up.
Here's the thing. He cuts off oil supply. We have plenty of oil. We have 780 million barrels in our strategic petroleum reserve. We have ways to supply oil to the refineries. Keep your eye on those Citgo refineries. That's the real issue.
And Tom, Venezuela is the 4th largest importer to the U.S., so it's no small player in all of this. However, he shares a refining operation with ExxonMobil in Louisiana. So it just makes you wonder what's going on here.
Yeah, but look, on one hand, you're absolutely right on what that would do to the Venezuelan economy. On the other hand, it's not unlike silly socialists to screw their people in order to make a point. All you have to do is look at Castro, who keeps his people in abject poverty. North Korea, where people eat bark off of trees because there's not enough food to eat. I mean, literally, if you walk through Pyongyang, as far as a hand can reach, there's no bark on trees because people eat it. That's what it's like living in North Korea. That's what the socialist dictators are happy to do to their people, to try to defeat those evil capitalists.
But, Peter, the point is, if the scenario worked out by Eric is at least something that these guys are thinking about, Citgo has some of the same business problems that PDVSA, the major oil company, does too. They are terribly run. He's fired all of the professional managers, put in his cronies, so they're in deep trouble too.
Sure, look, I think when guys like that talk, it's mainly for their own people to hear it. They want to act tough on the Americans, and we shouldn't really read that much into it. I think the broader problem are not only our dependence on foreign oil, but the fact that we can't even afford it. We're borrowing so much money from the rest of the world to pay for these imports. One of the biggest part of our trade deficit is oil. And where are we getting the money? We're borrowing it from the Saudis. We're borrowing it from the Chinese and the Japanese.
And then what are they
That's
doing?
A huge problem.
And then what are they doing? Then they're investing in our financial companies.
They're buying up our country out from under us. Where do you think all these sovereign wealth funds are coming from?
Hold on, let me bring Gary Kaltbaum into this. Gary, ConocoPhillips is taking a different tack with Venezuela, saying that they're going to sort of negotiate. That stock's up about 2% today. I mean, clearly these oil companies have some sense that they need some of Venezuela's operations in oil.
Well, I'm sure there is backroom negotiations and all this, but let's be something clear. Chavez's popularity is heading south in Venezuela. He does not have what he used to have as far as what people think of him. There's food shortages all over this place because he tried to fix prices. He's stealing food away from companies. Everything he's doing is an absolute joke right now. So this is all blah, blah, blah rhetoric, and he is not going to follow through on any of it. I'm not worried one way, shape, or form. And if we do lose a little oil, we'll get it from somewhere else.
He has the one most important thing that you need to run a country, the guns. And if you're a socialist, power flows from the barrel of a gun. That's what Chairman Mao said, and all socialists believe it, and they know that saying inside and out in the heart.
It's scary. It's scary that whose two best friends are? Ahmadinejad in Iran and the Bolivian Morales, who also...
Well, don't forget Fidel. He's not quite dead yet.
Right. But the cool thing about Fidel is when he goes, his brother... Raul is much more friendly. He's more free marketer. So that tie may break.
He was still leading the execution squads.
These three amigos, what they're doing is nationalizing their oil, and they're not friendly to the Mexicans.
In a world right now, Peter, where any blip on the news wires about anything having to do with oil, whether it's inventories or something happening in Nigeria, Ahmadinejad or Hugo Chavez, affects the price of this, how then do we see the domino effect here in the U.S.?
Well, look, these things maybe on a day-to-day basis on the margin affect react to what traders are doing, and maybe there's a short-term opportunity. But long-term, you have to look at the bigger picture. What's driving oil prices higher, what's going to continue to drive oil prices higher, is the debasement of our money, and not only our money, but money all around the world.
Because it's actually
you have global inflation.
Petrodollars that it's denominated in dollars.
Central banks are creating a lot of money. Money is losing value, so prices have to go up to compensate for the loss of value of paper currency. So you don't just see it in oil, you're seeing it in commodities across the board, all sorts of producer prices, and it's showing up in consumer
Gary,
prices.
go ahead.
Yeah, just remember one thing. With Chavez, money is power, and if he's selling less oil, he has less money, which means less power. That's why I think this is all a bunch of blah-blah rhetoric that will not be followed through on.
I think most of us would agree on that, right, Eric?
No, but can I address one of Peter's comments? When the rest of the world starts lowering their interest rates, like they will have to eventually, the ECB has to come down at some point, because you can't have this big discrepancy of the ECB
which will lift up the value of the dollar.
Which will lift up the value of the dollar. It'll bring things like gold and oil down, and it'll kind of even the playing field.
Global inflation is already running out of control. How can they? Everywhere. Look at the inflation rates around the world.
I disagree with that.
Every major economy is experiencing the highest. It's not growth. It's inflation. No, growth causes prices to fall. Inflation causes prices to rise.
Here's one thing that's not falling, and it's the markets. We've got a little over an hour now to the closing bell, and the Dow Jones Industrials are up 138 points.
What a segue, Liz Clayman.
I'm working it.
Good going. Yeah, we'll be right back.